Shavua Tov, a good Vach, a good Yom Tov. It's the Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus, being the 19th and 20th of Kislev, as I will mention, and also get ready for Hanukkah coming this week. We celebrate the release of the first Rebbe of Chabad from prison, where he was in serious danger of being a rebel against the government, but he was freed and allowed to continue to lead the Hasidim, and here we are today. So I want to share two stories of the Alter Rebbe. One was that a bunch of Jews who were renting property from a nobleman, and they in turn would farm the land and have a bed and breakfast and entertain and make money by having guests. There was a year where there was no rain, and the fields were useless, no crops had grown, they wouldn't be able to plant, they wouldn't be able to earn money, they wouldn't be able to pay their bills, and they would be kicked off of the property by the nobleman. And they were petrified, and it was the time, do it or die, for the rain to come, and it wasn't raining. So they came to the Alter Rebbe to ask him to bless them and to do some things, pray that Hashem should make it rain. And the Rebbe said he's really sorry, but there's nothing he can do. They left devastated. Word spread that these Jews are unfortunately in a desperate situation. And the Rebbe's grandson, who ultimately became the third Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel, approached these distraught farmers and said, go back to my Zayda, go back to the Rebbe, and present the following argument. And say to him, if you can help us and you choose not to, then that's being cruel, obviously unacceptable. If you can't help us, that's why you're not helping, how dare you be a leader among the Jewish people? Although this was a difficult thing to say to the Rebbe, they were desperate, they approached the Rebbe, and they said to him basically this line: if you can help us and refuse to, that's terrible. And if you can, and you're a Nasi and you don't know what's going on, if you're a Nasi, you have to help us. The Rebbe put his head down on the table, and after a few moments he picked his head up and he gave them a blessing, and the rain came on time and they were saved. And the Rebbe later commented, I see this as the work of my grandson. Another story that I've told before, I just want to quickly repeat it because it's a very inspirational and important story. The Alter Rebbe shared a house with his son and his successor, known as Rabbi Dov Ber, the Mittler Rebbe. And one night, while the son, the Mittler Rebbe, was studying Torah, his young child began to cry, fell out of the crib, whatever, he was crying, and his father was oblivious to it. Didn't hear it. He was so involved in his study. Meanwhile, the grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, up in his apartment, heard the baby crying. He came down, changed the pamper, gave him a bottle, comforted him, put him back to sleep, all while his son was oblivious to it. Eventually, the Alter Rebbe told his son that no matter how involved you are in your own studies or in your own personal growth, you can never be oblivious, you can never be deaf to the cry of a child. And that cry of a child doesn't only mean a child who's crying because they're wet, or they're dirty, or they're hungry. There's the cry of every Jewish soul wanting to be connected to Hashem. So we can't ignore that cry, whether it's loud or silent, and do our best to help every Jewish person get closer to Hashem. Have a great week and have an illuminating Hanukkah.